So this session with Blue got super interesting at one point. So I knew I wanted to assess her walking and some real life stuff. So with Baloo, she gets super excited with us here at the daycare and she jumps all over us. So I wanted to see how she dealt with people out in the real world. So before I took her out, I did lots of base work. So I did her go to bed cue that she had been learning. I did waiting at the doorway, which she does awesome at. And then we did basic walking in the daycare. So she walks really well. So I did some paces back and forth. And I do some paces in more difficult areas of the daycare as well. So out in the lobby tends to be where some dogs struggle because they know it's either go home time or time to come in, and they get a little crazy there. So one thing I start to notice with Baloo is her body language starts to become pretty reserved. Also, she had been playing in the pool, so she was a little wet, and I was just like, maybe she's a little cold. So we continue to kind of work through it. I go through the areas that are louder in the daycare, areas that are different for her, and she still walked really nicely, really politely. So then I started to graduate us out into the real world. So working our doorway steps again and back up through the lobby, doing that nice little doorway wait once she goes through the doorway. And at every doorway for her, I asked for a wait pretty much. So then we get outside, and she does well in the first initial stages of outside. And so I cruise her back and forth in front of the daycare, and then we cross the street. Across the street is this nice, just empty area in front of this building. So I do directional work here and just pretty much taking that same picture of how we walked inside, but outside, because I had never been outside of the daycare with her before. So I just wanted to see if she would get excited, if she would get wild, because she is quite wild in the daycare. So she was doing really well and just cruising along and doing the sits when I asked for the sit. So then at one point I was like, all right, let's graduate a little further and go to the gas station. So there's a gas station over on the corner, and I knew there was some people over there. There was some cars, and so I'm just working some impulse work before getting up there. And here is where I start to notice she gets a little bit more tense when watching the video playback. So her tail is becoming pretty tucked, and her ears are also becoming pretty tucked. She's getting that kind of wide-eyed, almost panicked look, and still walking really nicely, but her tenseness is just kind of building. So we go towards where the gas station is, and then at one point something just sets her off and she starts to panic. So I want to show you how I work through that panic with her. So whether it was a person or a sound, or I don't know what triggered her, but she started to become incredibly disengaged and incredibly stressed. So I worked her with some basic cues of sit and just waiting with her. I started to do a body block in the direction she wanted to go. What was problematic about this is I could see clearly when she was going to get away, she wanted to move directly back towards the daycare, but there's a street with cars that go really, really fast between me and the daycare. So when she goes to dart that way, I corrected her there and just asked her to sit again. I gave her some calm petting. And then I looked around and kind of assessed where our next move was going to be, because she was clearly distressed by the people over to the right. It seemed like she keeps looking back. She keeps trying to move away from them. So I asked her to sit, and I see in front of us, there's a nice like open pathway. So I move her through the lot, almost like still working her through that stressful trigger, which is the people to the right of us. And then I start to move back towards the daycare with her. And even though we're moving back towards the daycare, when she starts to pull and panic that way, I just still kind of give her a pop on the leash and say, "Hey, I know where we're going is it's exciting because it's where you want to go, but you got to move with me." Cuz again, the street next to us to my right is typically a very busy street. So, I want her to have that compulsion when walking. So if she becomes panicked, she's not going to dart across the street. Uh, and so I don't know if she does this in the real world. There was just something at the gas station, and I wasn't paying attention enough to hear if there was some crazy sound or anything, but she seemed to be a little tense prior. So I don't know, as far as her regular walks, what she encounters there, but she seemed to be a little distressed once we got to the gas station and she started to see different people that she didn't know. So, anyway, I worked her through it. She got through it. And so I'm going to do a lot of counter conditioning with her there and build her confidence and maybe just stop a little sooner from the gas station and do like a lot of foundation work in the environment prior. But just real interesting stuff because obviously at the daycare, she's wild as can be. So, anyway, still went great. She was still very obedient, very compliant, and I was able to give her some boundaries so she didn't get herself into trouble. If you have any questions, you know how to find me, and I hope you are having a great day wherever you're watching this from, and I will talk to you soon.